Well, how does this?
Yeah. I think we have. I am interested in the whole mission, but.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. It's great to see you all. I'm Charlotte Ward, CCL's Communications and Media Manager, and I'm your host today. Before we get started, please be sure to log your attendance for our meeting today. The link is in the chat. So let's kick off with a few updates and highlights since our last meeting. While I'm sharing these, please add your own local highlights in the chat, and I'll read some out in just a few minutes. Our first highlight is a new climate policy win in Congress. A policy idea that we worked on for several years has made it across the finish line. It's called the Prove It Act, and language from that bill was included in an appropriations bill and signed into law near the end of January. So what is the Prove It Act? It's a bipartisan bill introduced in 2023 in the last Congress. It would have required the Department of Energy to report on the carbon content of certain goods from American manufacturers compared to foreign competitors. It's really important for America to have this information so we can negotiate accurately with trading partners who have carbon border adjustments like the EU has now. Basically, this type of data is vital if we want global trade policy to effectively reduce emissions and reflect the relative cleanliness of American-made products. So CCL worked really hard to help advance this bill. You can see our stats on the screen. The Prove It Act was our primary ask in our Capitol Hill lobby day in both 2023 and 2024, and we generated thousands of messages and calls to Congress about it over those 2 years. We also produced lots of local media and talked about it in our communities throughout that time. If folks want to share the things you did to advocate for the Prove It Act, we'd love to hear about it in the chat. So while the bill didn't pass on its own before the end of the last Congress, CCL's work built really broad support for this policy idea, and our government affairs team has kept up conversations with the relevant congressional offices since then. Finally, last month, this policy idea was included in one of the funding bills. It had bipartisan support and was signed into law on January 23rd. Thank you to everyone who was with us during those years and who took action to move this policy idea forward. This is a great lesson that even when we can't see the immediate payoff of our advocacy, it's all building towards future wins. Another highlight since our last meeting is we have finalized and published CCL's updated mission statement and policy commitments. We've shared those with our state coordinators, group leaders, and liaisons in recent weeks, and they are now published in an updated version of our strategic plan. So I'd like to welcome CCL's Executive Director, Ricky Bradley, to share that update for you now.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Charlotte. And thank you everyone for being here today. It's so good to be with you, and especially this program. I'm so excited to have Bill join us here in just a few minutes. But before we get to that, just as some of you may recall from our meetings together this past fall, we communicated that a while ago, we began a focused effort to bring sharper clarity to CCL. And we set out to articulate clearly and confidently who we are, what we uniquely do well, and what must remain at the heart of our work for the long run. And so we've clarified that at our core, shouldn't be a shocker to anybody, that CCL is powered by grassroots volunteers just like you, those that are rooted in relationships both with each other and in Congress. And that our distinctive strength that makes us unique and necessary is equipping everyday citizens to build trust, work across differences, and create the political will necessary for durable federal climate solutions. And that is both unique and necessary at this moment and for future moments as well. So with the participation and input of more than 1,000 volunteers, staff, board members, and leaders across the organization, we've landed on a revised mission statement for CCL. And that is, CCL empowers everyday people to bridge divides and build political will for effective climate solutions in Congress. Let me say that again. Revised mission statement is that CCL empowers everyday people to bridge divides and build political will for effective climate solutions in Congress. So that statement reflects who we are at our best, and it also sets a clear standard for how we are moving forward. Now, additionally, we have heard frequently that it's been difficult to explain what it is CCL is working on at the moment. We have 4 policy areas, and it's been very troubling sometimes to try to explain what those are. So on the policy side, we've outlined 3 policy commitments, which are aligned with what climate scientists say is necessary. An important note here, these aren't an expansion or a change in the federal policies that we work on. This is just a simpler, clearer way to explain to people what it is that CCL works on. So at CCL, we are committed to advancing federal policy that reduces emissions, removes climate pollution, and protects people. I'll go in a little deeper now into each one of these to help you understand what we mean. Might be difficult to see this on the screen, but we'll put a link to our new strategic plan in just a few moments where you can pull it up yourself. But reducing emissions. We want Congress as a policy commitment to pass policies that will reduce emissions because, quite simply, climate change is caused because we are emitting way too much heat-trapping gas in Earth's atmosphere. But with laws that make it easier to build and connect clean energy, we can dramatically reduce those emissions and stop climate change from getting worse. The second policy commitment is to remove climate pollution. We also want Congress to pass policies that remove climate pollution. And the metaphor of an overflowing bathtub is a really good one here. If reducing emissions, the first policy commitment is sort of like turning off the tap water to stop adding water, then removing climate pollution is pulling the plug out, right, to let even more water drain out. So the good news here is that many of Earth's natural systems, like our forests and oceans and even our soil itself, we know can remove climate pollution. And every day there's technological advancements that are happening that are going to continue us down that path as well. So as a complement to the first policy commitment, reducing emissions, we also work on policies that can help remove more and more of our past pollution out of the atmosphere. And then the third commitment, protecting people. It's not least, it did come last, but it's not least. We're always looking for opportunities where our climate policy work can go further to protect people from the climate impacts they're already feeling, to be able to adapt to those things, and from the financial burden that we can expect if you are transitioning to a clean energy economy. So we're always looking to do that. We want clean choices to be affordable and accessible, and we want our communities to be resilient and proactive in the face of climate change. So those are our policy commitments. Again, it's not an expansion of what we work on. We're not pulling in new policy areas, but it's just a better way to explain what we work on. So hopefully this makes it easier for you to communicate about our work. When others ask you, what is it that CCL does? You can say, we work on federal policies that reduce emissions, remove climate pollution, and protect people. So soon you're going to see the updated mission statement and the policy commitments on our website. But for now, you can visit them on our newly updated version of our strategic plan, which Karina's already dropped in the chat for you, so you can pull that up. I realize this was a lot and it's new. It's not new to us because we've been working on it for quite a while, so we're excited about it. But we do have a training that's going to be happening this Thursday night if you want to go deeper into this. And believe me, we're going to give you plenty of time and to get familiar with this and update all of our materials and all that type of stuff in the future. But this Thursday night, February 19th, our communications VP and marketing communications vice president, Flannery Winchester, is going to be available to do a training session, really interactive, where you can practice with more of these ideas. So RSVP to that in the chat. So again, thank you for your time today. And I'm going to hand it back to Charlotte and just sit back and pay attention to the rest of the call. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks, Ricky. Okay, so since our last meeting, the EPA finalized its proposal to rescind the 2009 endangerment finding. The determination that climate pollution endangers public health and welfare. That finding has been the legal foundation under the Clean Air Act for regulating greenhouse gases. So this is a significant development. We put out a public statement on Thursday about it, and we'll drop the link in the chat for you. So for many of us, this feels more than a technical rule change. Like the attempted defunding of climate science and stop work orders on wind projects earlier this year, it can feel like the ground shifting beneath work rooted in established scientific and public health research. For all of us who have dedicated years to advancing science-based climate protections, seeing that framework set aside is discouraging. At the same time, this decision is unfolding within the executive branch and soon to be challenged in the judiciary. Congress does not have a direct role in EPA rulemaking, so asking members of Congress to reverse an administrative action they do not control is unlikely to change the outcome, and it could weaken our credibility with officers that understand those limits. In the future, Congress could clarify EPA authority through legislation, but that would require political alignment and political will that does not exist today. Knowing regulations are likely to come and go with the changes in administrations, our focus remains on building the political will needed for durable legislation that endures change in administrations. That means staying disciplined about where our engagement can have real impact now, strengthening bipartisan support for climate policy and helping everyday people understand why this matters to them. I want you to know that we do share your concern and we remain focused on the levers where our engagement can make a meaningful difference. So that wraps up our national update since last month. Now I'll mention a few of your local highlights before we turn to our guest speakers for today. So in Delaware, we've had volunteers presenting and tabling at the Delaware Youth Environmental Summit. Flagstaff, Tucson, and Phoenix chapters attended and tabled at Environmental Day at the state capitol. The Carson City, Nevada chapter had an in-person meeting with a great attendance of 32 people. That's really awesome. Well done. Janesville, Wisconsin chapter is getting ready for their Earth Day tabling, and they have a high school group on board to help. So that's wonderful. Thank you everyone for sharing and for everything you're doing to move climate action forward. And don't forget to share any pictures from your chapter activities with us. You can email them to marketing@citizensclimate.org. All right, I'm now pleased to introduce our guest speaker today. William J. Doherty, PhD, is Professor Emeritus in the Department of Family Social Science at the University of Minnesota. As a therapist, Bill focuses on couples on the brink of divorce and on political stress in relationships. He has authored 14 books for professionals and the public. Following the 2016 US presidential election, he co-founded Braver Angels, a citizen initiative bringing conservatives and liberals together to counteract political polarization and restore the fraying social fabric in American society. Bill is the chief designer of the Braver Angels workshops and has conducted sessions all over the country, including for corporations, state governments, and the Problem Solvers Caucus in Congress. Braver Angels now has volunteers working in all 50 states. Among Bill's awards is the Lifetime Achievement Award from the American Family Therapy Academy. Bill recently put out a powerful statement sharing his personal reflections on what's happening in Minneapolis and how we can show up in this moment of deep polarization. During turbulent times, we need measured voices of reason and calm. So we are grateful to have Bill here today to share a little of his wisdom with CCL. Welcome, Bill. We're so thankful to have you here.
To be with you, and it was particularly nice to just listen to Ricky's update and the good things that are going on in CCL. So happy to be here.
So, Bill, you recently put out a powerful statement in response to the conundrum many of us feel at this time, that we're experiencing a national crisis marked by fear and outrage. You made the case that healthy civic engagement requires emotional discipline to react thoughtfully rather than instinctively. You also talked about the 3 R's of social change: resist, repair, replace. Could you start by telling us more about that?
Sure. Do you want me to talk about the first part or the second? Do you want to the 3 R's? So there were 2 questions in there.
Why don't you dive into the 3 R's for us?
Okay. Yeah. So this idea is that really working on social change when there are serious problems in a society requires multiple kinds of efforts. And I put those in 3 R's for easy to remember. The first is resist. By that I mean protest, stand up against institutions, leaders, laws, structures that are unjust or hurting people. So resist. And the second is repair. The second is replace. So resist, replace. And replace means, well, what do you do if your resistance is successful? And this relates to policy, to having alternative structures, so that you aren't just protesting, then go home. And one of the recent years' examples of resistance that had nothing further was Occupy Wall Street, that some of us may remember. It was against capitalism, and then it faded out and people went home. It has to be replaced, which is the area of policy and structural change. And the third is repair, and that is efforts to attend to the kind of ruptures in the social fabric that have been created through the process of social change and of dealing with polarization over how the country should move forward. All 3 are important. And what can happen is that people who are dealing with one, who are focusing on one, and particularly resist at times of great turmoil, it can believe that that is the only thing that ought to be done at a particular moment. And certainly in Minnesota, we've been dealing with the ice surge and tremendous upheaval and dislocation and a lot of pain. And lots of folks have been involved in resisting. Tens of thousands of people have, and so that's an approach. And oftentimes, depending on what you believe is important, it's important to resist. what can happen is that sometimes people who are energized about resistance and protest can assume that anybody who's working on repair is sort of changing the chairs on the Titanic. Don't bother working on that till later, okay? Because right now the urgency is in resistance and protest, and I think that's a mistake. And so not everybody may know about Braver Angels, but we are in the repair business mainly. We work on political polarization. We have reds and blues working together, reds and blues and purples and others working together on what we think is the principal problem of our time, and that is that we have increasingly come to have warring tribes around politics, such that when something gets labeled as a red or a blue issue, it's not resolvable. So we're working on that. Plus, it's affecting people in their families, their social lives. So Braver Angels primarily working in the repair area. And so I articulated this in part to help our members understand that although an individual can work on resist and repair at the same time, an organization has to decide where it's going to focus. And it's almost impossible for an individual organization to putting resources and effort into resist, replace, and repair at the same time. And some of that is because, as I look at your mission statement, if part of what you want to do to change policy, because you guys are in the replace category first, and then in bridge building, which I would call repair, perhaps second, you really, if you engage in resistance against political figures, against political parties, then what happens is you lose credibility in both replace and repair. You lose credibility in the policy area, and you lose it, and it's almost impossible to work on repair because you've taken sides. So that's a long answer but I wanted to say where Braver Angels came from, and it's been helpful for us to make a distinction, just to bring this to a conclusion, between what somebody does as an individual and what an organization, I think, has to decide which subset of those three that it focuses on.
Thank you, Bill. So CCL's commitment to bridge building so we can enact bipartisan, durable climate policy is very much aligned with Braver Angels' reasoning that trust from both sides is what makes progress possible. Once an organisation is seen as the opposition, we know its influence collapses with half the political system, and making headway is practically impossible, as you've touched on. You quote Hemingway in saying that courage today looks like grace under pressure. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite quotes. There's another one that's similar to that, about leadership is non-anxious presence, okay, in the midst of a lot of challenges. So it's the same sort of thing that you referred to in your introduction, that when things are really very difficult, and in case of climate change, some of these recent policy changes, and certainly in Minnesota, what's been happening with ice, feelings run strong, and it's really important to step back at moments like that. If you're an individual, take some breaths, breathe a bit. For an organization to not react, but rather respond. So that's the grace under pressure. So, in the therapy world, we talk about reacting versus responding. And reacting, just goes through your spinal cord. It's bang, right? You touch something hot and you pull back. And responding goes through the cerebral cortex. It's we process how we feel, but we also reflect on what would be the most effective response at this point. And so this is difficult for individuals. It can be difficult for organizations. I'll give you an example of a lot of times the worst mistakes that boards make and for their organizations is something happens. It comes up at a board meeting in the last 15 minutes of the board meeting, right? What are we going to do about that? Everybody's tired. Everybody gets reactive. And then they just say, let's do such and such, fire somebody or send off this message. And then it haunts them for 5 years. And often that's because we have not given ourselves the grace, if you will, to slow down and say, given what's happened and given our mission, given our resources, what's the best way to respond?
Thank you. I think you're really speaking to how a lot of CCLers feel, because we do this work because we care really deeply. So when we witness injustices or cruelty, it can be very dysregulating for folks. And that can hinder our ability to do this work. How do we stay engaged with people whose views we strongly oppose? And how do we keep calm when one might feel someone else's actions are morally wrong in this particular moment?
Yeah, that's really important. We can think of that in our personal lives, because part of what's happened with polarization, and of course this tremendous polarization around climate issues, is that we can come to lose our curiosity about how people come to what they come to, and what the forces are that they are responding to, and what the narratives they are hearing and absorbing. And so they become a kind of not a complex person with multiple thoughts and feelings and multiple influences. They become the kind of bearer of immorality, or the bearer of ignorance. And the person in front of us becomes the enemy at that point. And we're not at our best at this point. So, the best you can do if you're activated that way is sort of do no harm. Just probably don't engage at that point. It was so tempting. So I want to tell a little story of an experienced Braver Angels volunteer leader who was taking our workshops on how to communicate across difference. She said to me, I think we need a new skill. Okay, new skill. And that is how to tell somebody, shame on you, for the, the ice surge or for something. Okay? I think that's what she's referring to. A new skill. Okay. That's not a skill. That's an attack. And what it gets back is, well, shame on you too, right? And this is a very good person, thoroughly believes in what we do with Brave Angels, but clearly dysregulated, which I'm not faulting her for. I been times in the last month I've become dysregulated by what's happening in Minnesota. But then to propose an action or to take an action that says, I am thoroughly distressed. You're thoroughly wrong. What you're supporting is immoral. And in case of climate, destroying future generations. I saw a little sign here saying there's no planet B, right? So the stakes are huge. And see, I can get myself worked up. And then you can seem willfully ignorant and willfully oppositional. And then I'm dysregulated now. And so then I put you down. And you can't, there's a line about you can't hate your way into getting people to change their mind. And we can't shame people into it. So here's the therapist in me. So you acknowledge your feelings, you take some breaths, you understand where you're coming from, and then you make a decision about what's the best response. Maybe in some cases, the best response is to disengage, but then to come back when you are ready to engage and to use your skills. And beyond that, what I said at the start of answering this question, to engage in curiosity about why somebody holds something that seems so ignorant and so wrong.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think this really aligns with our work. We have a new program called Bridge, Building Relationships in Dialogue, Growth and Engagement, which I know you've watched and had kind words to say about. So thank you for that. In it, we've been examining how our emotions often drive our reasoning. You name fear and outrage as two dominant emotions right now. How can we recognize those emotions in ourselves and others and respond skillfully?
Yeah, the start is to recognize that those are inside me, and that the other person or the other group doesn't make me feel something. So there's this thing about you're making me feel outraged. No, you're not making me feel it. You're doing something that in response to that, I feel outraged. But you are not making me feel that way. Just think about family life and parenting. Your very young child can say really outrageous things. I hate you, and you're a bad mother or father, and they're 4 years old and they're melting down. Okay. If your spouse says you're a bad person, I hate you, well, you have a different kind of reaction, right? So we are always interpreting. That's what I'm saying. So we're always feeling something that's in response to somebody, but it's also internally generated. So first step is to recognize this is how I am feeling, to take the emphasis off at the other person at the moment and say, this is what's going on in me. And then make a choice about how I want to respond to it, to respond rather than react. And that's where the freedom is between the observation and then the feeling. There is a space for conscious choice. And a lot of times we justify to ourselves why we burnt the bridge. We justify it as if we had no choice. Somebody says something terrible. I mean, suppose somebody says something awfully racist, for example, that does not require me to attack them emotionally. Does not require me to do that. I can choose to do that or something else. But what's happening nowadays is that people are getting to feel that their cause is so important that to be calm and reasoned and to listen is to compromise your integrity. So the folks who are opposed to bridge building, and there are many who are opposed to bridge building, on the left certainly, and I know there's some on the right, they feel that to work on these connections instead of either going silent with them, forget talking, or go on the attack, but to actually try to reason with people and listen to people is a compromise of one's core values. And I understand that. I do understand it. When you're dealing with evil, why play nice? Okay. If somebody's come into your house to attack you, you don't reason with them. You resist them. Okay. There are times in life not to reason. Okay. There are times in life to either shut down or, or counter, like physical danger. But that's not what we're dealing with. These chronic, policy-oriented, government-oriented political leader. We're talking about chronic issues that keep coming up, and we need reasoned and reasonable approaches to build bridges, or we're never going to get to the outcomes. I've been thinking about the elections. People are always saying, wait 2 years, wait 2. So what we're dealing with is this sort of every 2-yearism. So I don't have to build bridges. I can just beat them up, beat them at the elections. Okay. And what's happening, this is just my own personal opinion here. What happens is we go from 52% to 48, and then we keep switching. And then who's ever in power shuts down what the other folks have done because we've not built the consensus. So what you folks are about is trying to build that consensus. So it was bridge building and building the political will. And the political will has to be bipartisan in this day and age. It has to be, because no one party now or in the foreseeable future is going to control everything.
Great, thank you, Bill. Even as we strive to make a difference, many of us are understandably feeling grief and anger or despair about the state of politics. And as a therapist, I wondered if you could suggest how CCL leaders can support volunteers who might be struggling, and what can folks do individually to support their own mental health?
Yeah, we're dealing with that in Braver Angels as well. And so I think to be in contact, like you are, to have people being with each other, to keep working on hope. I mean, for me, hope is a choice. It's not always based on rational considerations. And so really encouraging people to continue to have hope, to stay in connection with other people who feel the same way. That's why I think it's so lovely that there are many of your chapters who tune in every month for these meetings, because they're getting connected and getting kind of an infusion of hope from national leaders, and they are engaging with each other. So being with others is a big antidote. With others who also are holding on to hope, because a lot of us are with people who want to give up, or who want to do, who say the only path forward is the resist path. Okay, is to hit the streets, to resist, to call out politicians by name. So if that's your environment, if everybody around you is saying this is not the time for bridge building, you have to be with other bridge builders. You have to be with other bridge builders. And I would encourage people to maybe at the chapter level to practice how to respond, to actually practice your response to the skeptics in your life who say it's time to stop talking. It's time to stop talking to the other side. We did an exercise last night we have a monthly call with our workshop moderators. And instead of dealing with workshop oriented stuff, we had people write out their answers to this question. If the world's on fire, what good does it do to dialogue and have workshops? And implicitly in that was the idea that this is only time to resist, that to repair and to work on bridge building is meaningless now. And so what we had people do was to take a moment and imagine this was a friend of theirs who, who's not an enemy of the work. In fact, maybe is on the same political side as you. This would be somebody who believes in the science of climate change, and we need to have these policies and so, but they have given up. They've given up the idea that an organization like CCL could do anything. How would you respond to them? So what we have people do is write out, how would you respond? And then share it with one another and kind of hear how different people respond to it. Because partly maintaining hope is connecting with others who have it, and also knowing how to inoculate yourself from being too much affected by the voices of despair, the voices who would say that we can make no progress until we defeat those enemies. So that's my answer.
Thank you. Well, we've got, I think, maybe a couple more minutes. So I just quickly wanted to ask you, you mentioned hope. What gives you hope?
Well, I like to say I was born with the optimistic Irish genes, not the depressive ones, which is probably why I'll never be a great Irish poet, because those people always said they were depressed. So some of it is dispositional, but some of it is a kind of a moral choice. The problems are grave. The problems are grave. And I feel obligated to do something constructive, and to not depend on seeing outcomes short term in the larger way. I could tell you an advantage of working on repair and bridge building is that you do see gains. You do see gains. You find common ground with some folks. You do feel so. It's been hard to maintain hope this week in Minnesota, this month in Minnesota, but I did a Brave Angels workshop called Depolarizing Ourselves. I did that this earlier this week, and it lifted my spirits because there were 35 people who came in the midst of all this to say, how do I look at my own inner polarizer, and how do I keep respect for the humanity of people that I disagree with? So it was a room full of people working on that kind of humility, and so it just gave me hope. The hope that it's harder to have when I just look at the newspaper or certainly social media. So for me, it's an ethical choice to maintain hope. It's kind of like if you're dealing with things are scary and you got little kids, you gotta help them keep hope, right? And so that's how I feel for our country.
You mentioned social media, and we actually do have a question from someone that says, how do we members of Congress escape the polarized environment exasperated by social media, in which we feel that anyone who agrees with us is bad? How do you kind of address that?
Well, a little question there, right? Yeah, we're beginning as a society to recognize, to name the problem of social media. We're beginning to see this is hurting us collectively. And we can see in the schools, so a lot of problems start to get recognized in the children, and then we change policy there. So a lot of schools are now prohibiting their cell phones in school, their iPhones. And so it just naming social media as what political scientists call an accelerant of polarization. And the thing is, hardly anybody likes it. The only people who really benefit are the conflict entrepreneurs, who are their own model of life is to benefit from stirring up outrage. Okay, I mean we all do different things for a living. That's what they do for a living, and so we're being played. So I'm talking about some framing of this, because the framing of the other side uses social media in a terrible way. That's the polarized framing, to say we are being played by companies, by conflict entrepreneur. We are being played. That means we, the people, can do something about it.
I love that. Thank you. Well, I'm sorry we don't have more time, because this has been absolutely fascinating. We so appreciate you joining us today. And I encourage everybody listening to keep the conversation going in CCL's community forums. You can also ask any follow-up questions there, and we can get those to Bill. And just to let you know, CCL also has a Braver Angels action team, so check that out. And we also put a link to some Braver Angels resources in the chat. So thanks so much, Bill. It's wonderful to have you here.
Well, one more plug for this, the action team. Some of our very, very best Brave Angels leaders are big supporters of CCL and on that action team. So I really encourage. CCL was the first organization that we really got into a deep collaboration and partnership. And so I'm very grateful to you all as partners to make a difference in our world.
Thanks, Bill. Well, keep up the great work. We appreciate it. All right, well, let's quickly get into some actions. One of our actions from last month was to do some chapter planning for the year ahead. So we'll start off with a quick video featuring the leaders from our Lynchburg, Virginia chapter, telling us how that action went for them. They held a fantastic interactive exercise to get people brainstorming and invested in the year ahead. I'll let Steve and Robin tell you more.
Hi, I'm Steve Selby. I'm in Lynchburg chapter of CCL.
I'm Robin Peeler, also in Lynchburg. I've been the co-lead for just a couple months. I was liaison for about a year and a half before that. Steve and I were just talking about planning for the year and kind of wanted to kick the year off with some new activity to get everybody engaged and get our members' ideas as well. So Steve had suggested some training, and I think I wish I could remember which group did it, but they did a similar activity in another area of CCL. Another group did it and talked about it, and it just sounded so perfect for our group.
This way of doing brainstorming that really encouraged every person to actively participate. And that was putting sheets, which was the CCL 5 levers of political will. And then everybody got the Post-it notes, and they could just put ideas on the Post-it notes and stick them on there. So if we broke into 5 groups of 2. So everybody really was just working with another person and writing their ideas. And under each lever, it was where we are now, with what we'd like to do in 1 year and where we'd like to be in 5 years. There was a lot of participation.
So it's so fun and so easy, and really let everybody kind of have their voice. So we got some repeat ideas, which we kind of took it, if a lot of people came up with it, that would be a really popular activity that the group would support. So
even no matter how much of it we accomplish, it's already provided a purpose or a positive result. That's something that has a lot of value in itself.
I think we're feeling really positive about it. We've got all the information compiled, and we're going to review it at the meeting this weekend. So going to kind of show what all came up as some of the more popular ideas. And
it's really good that we've got everybody's input, and we can look, and from all those ideas, we'll make our choices of what we can actually do. I think that I've been group leader for quite a few years, and now Robin's helping, thank goodness. And but doing things like this isn't something that I would just think of. I wouldn't do it. There's value in the training that was provided, because it did give us a path to do something that I think is good for our chapter.
Yeah, it was also a good bonding experience because we got a lot more interaction with each other. So we had a lot more time to talk and have more smaller conversations. And I think that was good. And also just always having food at something like that. We had snacks, so that made it extra fun too.
Awesome. Love the snacks for sure. Well done, Lynchburg chapter. Now let's look ahead to the actions you can take this month with our February action sheet. You can follow along and find out more details at cclusa.org/action sheet. So our first action for this month is to prepare for spring recess. Members of Congress will be home from DC March 30th through April 10th. The action sheet gives you some ideas of things you could be doing now to lay groundwork for connecting with your members of Congress when they're back in your district. So our next action is generate local media on permitting reform. We've got an updated op-ed template that you can use to talk about permitting reform in your local newspapers. And if you're politically right of centre, we invite you to register for CCL's virtual Conservative Conference and spread the word about the event. Bob English of Republic EM will be the keynote speaker, and we'll also be joined by Neil Chatterjee, former chairman of FERC. The whole program lineup is fantastic, and applications are open now. So definitely go check out all the details on the conference page. As you may remember, last month we kicked off our transformational organizing training program called Bridge. This month's Bridge lesson is understanding how we all make meaning. And the communication skills exercise will help you practice talking about CCL's updated missions and policy commitments. And lastly, don't forget about our upcoming events and trainings, which are all listed in the action sheet. We're trying something a little bit different this month. So right now, we're going to give you the option to stay on for another 15 minutes to take an action, 15 minutes. Or if you're part of a chapter that needs to move on with your own meeting agenda now, then please feel free to do so. But otherwise, we're going to hop into some quick actions. For the next few minutes, we're going to write Congress and also practice a new skill from our bridge advocacy training. So let's get started, taking a few minutes to write Congress together. Here's the context for our action. Congress is working on the next highway bill reauthorization package, and they're probably going to put a new fee on electric vehicles and hybrid cars. We want to make sure they take a fair and forward-looking approach here. Essentially, we don't want them to put a fee on EVs and hybrids that is a whole lot more than gas cars. Let's give you a little background about why they're looking to add this new fee. So America has something called the Highway Trust Fund, which finances the construction and maintenance of our interstates. The Highway Trust Fund gets its money mostly from taxes on gasoline and diesel. There is a small amount you pay each time when you fill up at the pump. As more and more drivers switch to electric or hybrid vehicles, that means fewer trips to the gas station and less climate pollution from our cars, which is a good thing, but it also means less gas tax being collected and therefore less money to build and maintain America's highways. That's the problem Congress is trying to solve. So in the upcoming highway bill reauthorization, Congress will likely include a federal fee for EV and hybrid drivers to account for the fact that they are not filling up at the pump and therefore not paying the gas tax and contributing to the Highway Trust Fund. We're going to write to Congress to keep the EV and hybrid fee fair compared to the gas tax so that EVs and hybrid ownership remains an attractive, affordable option. Our climate-friendly car choices shouldn't come with extra costs. After all, millions of people across America, myself included, and lots of folks on this call, I'm sure, are reducing their transportation emissions by switching from a gas car to a hybrid or electric vehicle. We want that trend to continue so that America keeps reducing emissions from our transportation sector. So there you go. We've got the QR code for you on screen so that you can send that message to Congress. So if you go ahead and pull up cclusa.org/live-action to find our action tool, you can type in the link or you can scan the QR code on the slide with your smartphone. We're going to take 3 minutes to complete this action together. All right, thank you for taking that action. So now we're going to move on to our bridge exercise. The first lesson of our Bridge Advocacy Program teaches a core insight from social and behavioral science. Humans make decisions with our intuition first, and then we justify those decisions with our rationale later. This is true for ourselves and for people we are trying to persuade to support climate solutions. So this concept is vital to understand. The training uses a metaphor of an elephant to represent our intuition and a rider to represent our rational side. The elephant often gives us a reaction, a pull, or a sense of certainty before we can fully explain why. Our explanations tend to come later, with the rider making sense of where the elephant already went. In this month's action sheet, we ask volunteers to spend some time working to understand your own elephant, your own intuitive responses, to really grasp how this works. So we're going to do a little bit of this now. So the setup is, start by thinking of an issue you care about that reliably sparks a strong emotional reaction for you. It could be climate related or something else. So just have a think about that now. Then I want you to reflect on the following questions. So you can do this on your own or with your group, but we'd like you to reflect on the following. Where do you notice the reaction in your body? Are your shoulders tense? Is your heart beating faster? What is the feeling associated with the reaction? Perhaps it's scared, angry, sad. What values feel most activated? What feels at stake here? And how would you respond if someone gave you a perfectly logical argument which went against your gut instinct on it? You could also think about, when have I noticed myself feeling certain before I could fully explain my reasoning? The self-awareness you're practicing here is a foundational skill in our relational advocacy approach to climate action. When we can notice what's happening inside of us, we understand that it's happening in others too. This helps us to stay curious instead of reactive when we're talking to people in our communities or in Congress. And if you want to go deeper into this concept, check out the first training in Bridge Unit 1, where you can walk through the material yourself or watch the recorded training, and make sure to take the knowledge check at the end, which will really help. All right, well, thanks again to Bill Doherty for being our guest today. And thank you all for being here for this month's meeting and even staying on for this extra time. We'll see you next month for our March monthly meeting, which is on Saturday, March 14th. And we'll now close out the call with some CCL TV. So thanks, everybody. Hi, Portland. We've got Lynchburg there. Hello again. There we go to Phoenix. That looks like a good track. We're in California. everybody. It's been great to have you here. Keep up the great work.